Hey there, I'm Ashley, and this is New Day with Ashley. If you're looking for inspiration to make a difference and create lasting impact, then you're in the right place. Get ready to be encouraged by the stories of my guests who have taken risks, overcome challenges, and created opportunities. It's time to make the most of your new day. My guests today have helped create lasting impact on families, small businesses, and communities all over the region. Hawley and Mike Dawson are the owners of Craftwell Architecture and Construction. What started as a dream in a backyard shed has grown into an award-winning firm that is passionate about people and storytelling through design. And they are dedicated to planning for the future through sustainable practices and innovative thinking. Well, welcome to New Day with Ashley, Mike Dawson, Hawley from Craftwell Architecture and Construction.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yep.
Great to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
So I want to tell your story a little bit. So Chris, should we start with you?
Mm-hmm.
Being you guys made the switch to Craftwell just about 3 years ago, you said?
That's right.
Okay. So before that, Hawley Architects. But let's go even before that.
Mm-hmm.
You're from Minot,
Mm-hmm.
and then came up to NDSU to go to school.
Yeah, I actually played a couple years of tennis at Minot State, and then decided that, I wasn't going to be a professional tennis player, so I should probably figure out the rest of my life. And just, finally kind of followed the dream of being an architect, which I had kind of always had since I was a little kid, and followed it here, engineering at first, and then realized that wasn't for me. And, architecture, like the minute I walked into my first architecture class, I thought, oh, wow, this is pretty awesome. So,
Wow.
And the rest is kind of history after that. Like I was pretty committed mentally. I was older than average student at that time, so it was kind of like, it was all about school, and loved NDSU. Ended up in Minneapolis for a very, very brief period of time, working for a larger firm there. Realized that wasn't for me. Liked kind of being a part of a lot of things, and that's what small firms are really about. Came back to Fargo, built a treehouse, which was my first project. I think that's, super unique opportunity, fun, opened some doors, worked for Mike Allmendinger, worked for Stahl Architects.
So you moved back here for a job?
For a job.
Okay.
Yep. Was with Stahl Architects for probably 8 years before, just deciding to launch out on my own. And when I did that, I needed help immediately. And then I interviewed Mike, and, the rest is history.
Yeah. All right, so let's take Mike back. You're from here.
Yep,
from Fargo.
from Fargo, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And also went to NDSU.
I did, but I also took a little detour. So
Okay.
I went to a small school in Dallas out of high school, SMU, pursued business. I had always wanted to be an architect, though, ever since I was 6 years old. Talked about it all the time.
How do you know when you're 6 years old or young that you want to be an architect? Like I would think you'd want to be like a firefighter.
Yeah, don't know.
I think when you like to draw,
Okay.
it's pretty hard to get it out of your system.
Draw and architecture is kind of like this cross between being an artist and being an engineer in a way, so it was like a, ability to draw, make things,
Build things.
and be a little creative. So it just seemed to fit. My grandma used to give me books on architecture, and I was just like, I love it. So
That's awesome.
yeah. But went to pursued a business degree, actually.
Okay.
More of the concerned about the social aspects of college, and so
Hey, I have a business degree. What are you saying?
well, that was my
It's okay.
first year. It's kind of like, well, I'm just going to go kind of feel this
General.
out. It's a completely different place, right? I knew NDSU had a great architecture program, but at that time, I just wasn't ready to accept that, yes, I'm going to go to school where I grew up, which, come to find out there's actually nothing wrong with, and I love this place more than anything. So did SMU for a year, came back to Fargo, enrolled in the architecture program. I was accepted the first year, and then kind of decided I had to get a little bit more out of my system. So I was a ski bum in Colorado for 9 months, and then woke up one day and realized I should probably get serious about my life. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to re-enroll, and came back to Fargo and just got really serious about school. And, was kind of all in at that point, super focused. And towards the end of my last year, they had a job fair at school, and I was the only guy that didn't go, or the only person that didn't go, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my degree. You know, I kind of wanted maybe run off into the woods and make furniture and just kind of, you know, do that thing for a while. And then my older brother and his wife were having their bathroom in their house remodeled. And he said, hey, you know, we're working with this architect. I think you guys would be a good fit. You should give him a call. So I called him up. We had lunch, and he needed a few kind of low-level things done, which was kind of my resume, you know, my interview. And so actually the first one was building a model for a home show that was coming up. And so did that and just kind of ran around to some job sites. And then, you know, after I graduated is kind of when we started working full-time together.
Okay, so that architect was you.
Yeah, that was Chris.
Okay.
Sorry. That person was
me.
Chris.
It was you.
Right.
So
Would have been weird if it wasn't.
And so you were still in school, though?
I was still in
during that?
school.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wrapping up my last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when did you start Chris Hawley Architects then?
So when Mike was in his final year is when I started. So
you did, okay.
This would have been 2011.
Okay.
Would have been October of 2011. And I had jumped off. I probably had three projects that were, you know, could kind of sustain me individually, probably for 2 years. They were, you know, pretty nice projects. And then it just started to snowball after that. Like we ended up getting 2 very large projects at that exact moment, and you know, and I ended up having to hire immediately. And you know, Mike kind of helped with some of the odds and ends, and in you know, while he was still in school, and then we started hiring pretty feverishly like that following year.
Okay.
So
yeah, and then you guys came together now as partners.
that's right.
Right.
Yeah, 11 years later.
Yeah.
10 years later.
Yeah.
You proved that it was going to work. No.
Yeah. Well,
No.
you know, it takes a while. You know, I mean, especially, you know, this gig, I learned very quickly. I mean, there's a big humbling process that happens when you come out of, well, at least I experienced it. I know Chris did as well. And we see it a lot. Coming out of architecture school, you know, you're kind of a little bit egocentric. You know, you think that, you know, these are my projects. The thing I'm working on is so special. Everybody cares, you know, not that extreme, but yeah, so there was a humbling process, and it just took a while to kind of understand how, you know, to listen to people, to take really great notes, how to put a project together. I think my first 6 years was probably just sitting and listening and taking notes and observing, you know, so yeah, it took a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think Mike and I both come from like customer service backgrounds and business. Both of our families had businesses, and so like it was kind of ingrained in who we are. You know, for me, you know, the concept of like being humbled by that, I think is really interesting. Like none of our projects are our projects; they're our clients' projects.
Sure,
we're just there to help, and you know, there are very few people that have that kind of emotional intelligence to understand that. You know, Mike is one of those people, and so it's actually super natural that he's in the position that he's in, as a kind of in a leadership position and running projects and meeting with clients. That's not for everybody. And I, you know, it's interesting, like being a business owner and thinking that everybody that you hire wants to do what you do, and then realizing that there are very few people actually that want to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and so you kind of, you know, when you see it, you kind of got to embrace it and make sure that they have a home to do their thing. And that's been the last 11 years too, is just kind of, you know, allowing Mike to be Mike.
Should be a little scary.
Right. Yeah. I mean, no.
Yeah. Right.
So was that kind of a risk, you know, going into a partnership at all, or challenges?
I mean, we have so much history now, and we are, I mean, it's you know, these things are, business partnerships or marriages. They're just, you know, and so they're, yeah, anything like that is a risk. You know, I think Mike knows what he's getting. We've done this long enough together. You and I think that's a two-way street. Like, we respect each other. We have a similar approach to how to handle people and clients and what's important. And I think, interestingly enough, I think our value systems are pretty well aligned in terms of like what's important, whether it's, family first, business second, that's definitely there. I think Mike and I take everything extremely personally when it comes to projects and, making sure that everybody's happy. We're people pleasers. There's all of those things are shared. Would you agree with that?
Certainly, yeah. And I recognize the risk. Well, I don't know if I'd call it a risk, but just the sort of sensitivity to changing the perception, if you will, of it. I mean, for so long, it's kind of you're putting, Chris, is putting more or less. You put out a product, right, and you have a service, and so. When you share that, it's important to kind of share beliefs and, respect for each other and, not to be overly dramatic, but we've just been through a lot together, the beginning years were really, really hard. I really didn't know what I was doing. I was not like a contemporary trained, new architecture grad. I was more of kind of a classically trained guy like Chris was, a lot of hand drawings, a lot of making things with your hands, a lot of, seeing things in person, not just from a desk. And so I understood that, for me to be in a certain position, I had to, make sure that I was delivering a similar, experience and service for people because, and that was another thing, was kind of with the name changes. It's about more than Chris. It's about more than me. It's about everybody in the group. You know what I mean? A lot of people play really important roles to make projects happen. It's not just us.
Yeah. Let's talk about the name Craftwell.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, the name. It's the name thing. It was we'd been talking. I mean, I remember 10 years ago talking about, Chris was talking about changing it to something other than just his name, and so it's kind of been in the back burner for a while. And then it was like, hey, well, this partnership's happening. Let's think about a name. And, each one of us came up with a really long list and remember sharing it with each other. And, we just landed on craft. I mean, it was all about craft, and in quality. And I remember we left one morning on a Friday, with this word craft in our head, and we came back on Monday and we were just kind of like, hey, how about Craftwell, which is a kind of a combination of a few things, but so that's kind of where we landed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like a good fit. I mean, the interesting thing is like when I started this, I wasn't creative enough to think very hard about a name that was beyond myself because I honestly, when I jumped out on my own, I really thought, I'm just going to be a sole practitioner for the rest of my life and do small projects. The reality is I was on a bigger train that I didn't know, that it was going to be bigger than what it was. And I think in hindsight, I wish I would have done it immediately and thought about that a little harder to start. Interestingly enough, you fast forward 6-7 years into that. It got weirder and weirder and weirder for me to walk into a meeting and everybody thinking that I was the only person doing work. Sure. And it's like, we're at 20 staff right now, and it's like, had we held on to that any longer, it just would have been super awkward. It, like I said, it was like false advertising. It's kind of what it felt like
Sure.
At some point. And so it's about a group. It's about, architecture is a team sport. I've always kind of, loved to be the captain of a team. And I think Mike has always liked to be the captain of a team. Mm-hmm. For sure. We're kind of molded that way, but, love, seeing other people succeed at what they do and assembling like really special talents to kind of help the greater good and help our clients. And so, yeah, it just feels right. I mean, I think Mike and I are, we're kind of like carpenters at heart in a way, like we're kind of artists who like to make things with our hands. And I come from that, in my own family. I mean, we just, I come from my mom's like a furniture maker. And so this was always just kind of it just felt right, I think, for kind of what we do. And, you know, Mike, I think ever since I have met him, has talked about the craft of whatever it is that you do, you know, whether you're a chef, whether you're an architect, I mean, he's a foodie. So like he loves to talk about
That's my second
this.
life.
Yeah.
You know, that crafting of anything is like when you see somebody who's amazing at their thing, you're just like, oh, wow, there's nothing better than that. So I think it's a good fit. Yeah. It's a good fit.
Hence why it takes so long, you know?
Right.
To become skillful at any craft, it doesn't happen overnight.
Wow, what a great episode. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always so inspiring sharing these stories. To listen to the full podcast, go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Remember to like and subscribe. I would love if you could leave me a 5-star review. This helps us reach and engage with more people. Join me next week, and until then, make the most of your new day.